And I know we still have people joining, but because of the length of our content, we are going to go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to our hosts today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie McDonough, and I will be your presenter today. I just want to pull up our presentation here. Give me just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. If you're having any trouble hearing me, please just type in the Q&A section, and Kim will be able to relay it back to me. So welcome to the Careguides webcast. As I said, my name is Katie McDonough, and I will be your presenter today. Today we will be reviewing Careguides functionality, how to set up Careguides in your system, and how to maintain up-to-date Careguides. We do have a full schedule for you. Again, Yep.
I think I need to, you're not the presenter. We need to make you the presenter.
Oh, okay. Hold on one second.
Okay, is everybody seeing her slides now? If someone could just put a Q&A in there.
Thank you, Seth, for pointing that out. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great. So like I said, my name is Katie McDonough, and Kim is also on the line. We'll be your presenters today. We are both consultants for Galen Healthcare Solutions. During the presentation, Kim had mentioned that you could type in the Q&A section if you have any questions. Just make sure to push the send button and it will go through. We will be discussing any of the questions at the end of the presentation. Anything that we cannot get to, we will be sure to post on our Galen Wiki, and I will provide you with that address at the end of the presentation. Today we will be looking at Careguides from the perspective of the physician as well as the support analyst. By the end of today, you will be able to define a Careguide, demonstrate the basic functionality of a Careguide from the perspective of a clinician, review the process for installing and setting up Careguides in Allscripts, review Careguide properties that are editable, review preferences that are used with Careguides, review the process for applying Careguide updates, and demonstrate the use of Careguide admin. As you can see, and as Kim mentioned, we have tons of information to cover today. We'll try to get through the information and have time for questions and answers at the end, but if we do run short, we can post them on the Galen Wiki with the webcast video. Today, during our presentation, we will be using Allscripts Enterprise version 11.2, hotfix 7. Don't forget to ask any questions through the Q&A section. I'd like to start off with just asking a couple general questions to our audience to get a better idea of who's out there and what exactly what modules you're using. So Kim, if you could just post that first poll question, we'll give you a couple minutes to answer.
Okay, I'm going to post this out there, and this is a two-part question. We kind of want to know what version you're currently using, or if you're a current enterprise user, or if you're looking into the application just to see what it can do for you. And if you are an enterprise user, if you currently use Careguides in your system. So we give everybody a few minutes to answer that.
All right, so we can close the poll. So it looks like most of you, it's about 50-50. Half of you are using Careguides and half of you aren't. So this information will help me proceed with our presentation. So what I'd like to start off by doing is kind of reviewing where Careguides started. Why did Allscripts decide to put Careguides in the system, and where did this whole idea come from? So Careguides were built in version 11 as a better, more efficient way for providers to place orders for a patient based on a specific diagnosis. Prior to version 11, quick sets were used in a similar fashion. The system pre-populated quick sets based on the different orders a provider placed linked to a problem. The process for creating quick sets was system automated, which was a good and a bad thing. On a positive note, everything a provider usually ordered for a diagnosis was listed in the quick sets without any additional build work. The negative side to that was when physicians placed orders linked to a problem that were not a standard of care for most patients, those orders would still be listed in the quick set for all patients. Careguides were presented as a better way to standardize care for diagnoses, specifically commonly used diagnoses. Any quick sets that were built in previous versions still display in the ACI and are usable. However, Careguides provide a more efficient way of placing orders based on a problem. The one benefit to quick sets that Careguides does not present is that multiple quick sets can be displayed for multiple problems in the Q set tab in the ACI, whereas only one Careguide can display at one time for one problem. So that's kind of the negative side to it. But like I said, you can still use quick sets. You can use quick sets and Careguides together. But what I'd like to do next is really delve into what is a Careguide. After reviewing quick sets, it's important to really define a Careguide. Allscripts defines Careguides as a predefined problem-based order set that enables providers to quickly create a plan of care and build the health management plan for a specific problem. Each Careguide deals with a specific clinical presentation, such as an initial or follow-up visit for a chronic disease, an acute self-limited presentation, or a health maintenance visit. They facilitate the rapid entry of prescriptions, orders, and follow-up items for a patient encounter. Order reminders selected from Careguides are added to the Health Management Plan, or HMP, component. The process of order selection also builds a customized patient education handout that includes a fixed text monograph about the condition or health maintenance topic that the template addresses. This document can print automatically for the patient to take with them. Allscripts delivers a small set of 61 Careguides with version 11.2. If clients choose to purchase Careguides, they will have access to 963 Careguides. Enterprise EHR versions prior to version 11.2 do not have any Careguides pre-delivered during install. These 963 Careguides can be divided into 4 categories: symptom-based, diagnosis-based, procedure-based, and health maintenance-based. Symptom-based focuses on the workup and symptomatic treatment of the identified symptom. Diagnosis-based focuses on confirmation of the diagnosis and includes workup, orderable items, as well as testing for complications, monitoring disease progression, and medication treatment for the disease. Procedure-based focuses on post-procedure medication and lab testing, but does not include the diagnostic testing that leads to the decision to perform the procedure. Health maintenance-based focuses on age range and gender-specific preventative care orderable items, including regularly scheduled tests, medications, immunizations, and health maintenance reminders. Careguides consist of medication and non-medication orders, guidelines attached to these orders, and monographs with patient instructions. Providers are able to prescribe medications and orders directly from the Careguide section of the ACI. Not all Careguides have orders in each category, though. If a clinician prescribes an order from within the Careguide, it will be linked to the problem associated with the Careguide. So when we were defining a Careguide, we did talk about a monograph. Careguide monographs are a standard question and answer section written at the 5th to 7th grade reading level. Clients can choose to replace the standard monograph with a free text monograph to which they can add their own patient education content. The Allscripts Care Guide templates include an option for Spanish translated monographs on the patient handout. I'll be showing you an example of a monograph in just a few minutes. Allscripts refers to guidelines as just right, just-in-time information, or JRITI. The information in the guidelines is for the clinician prescribing the medication or order. I'll show you an example of a guideline in just a few minutes. There's two types of guidelines, an item and a template. Item guidelines can be applied to order reminders, instructions, follow-ups, and referrals to satisfy the National Quality Forum measure requirements for meaningful use. Template guidelines can be used for any item on a care guide. All guidelines are set in Care Guide Admin on the Enterprise or Personal tab, depending on the care guide. A clinician will know there is a guideline for an item because a red exclamation point will display to the left of the item in the care guide, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. The clinician can view the guidelines by right-clicking on the item and selecting Guideline. All right, so now that we've defined what a care guide is, I think we should probably go and take a look at one. So bear with me, I'm just going to open up Allscripts here. Again, this is version 11.2, and I see most of you are not on this version, so if it looks a little bit different, that's probably why. All right, let me know if you have any trouble seeing Allscripts at this point. Can everyone see the note that I have open? Kim, can you see that all right?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so the clinician we will be using today is Dr. Joe Bones, and his patient is Alexandria Jones. Alexandria Jones made an appointment to see Dr. Bones to follow up with her Bell's palsy. She is also complaining of lower back pain. I already opened an acute visit note with the chief complaint of lower back pain. So from within the note, we're in the assessment note section, and I have Bell's palsy listed there. So the first thing I want to do is assess Bell's palsy. And I also want to access the care guide associated with Bell's palsy. I can do that one of two ways. I can right-click Bell's palsy and choose the care guide option, or I can click the care guide button. Just something to note, if there was not a care guide associated with Bell's palsy, the care guide option would be grayed out. So there is not necessarily a care guide associated with every problem. I'm going to click the button here, the care guide button. And we can see that the ACI opens. So I'm within the ACI. I'm on the Problem-Based Orders tab, and I have the Care Guide tab selected. Notice right next to it is the Q-Sets tab for your quick sets that we talked about earlier. So within the Care Guide tab, we're able to see the different sections that we talked about earlier. So we see medications, orders, instructions, precautions, and follow-ups and referrals. We can see that even though there's no follow-ups and referrals for this care guide, the sections does still display. At the top of the screen, we have some additional information. So you have your action as to where your medications will go if you prescribe a medication from within your care guide, the pharmacy that the prescriptions will go to, and the RX benefit information for this patient. You also have the status for your orders. You have your to-be-done date. You have an option to schedule, make certain orders schedulable. And then you also have your communication method for your orders. Again, this can be changed so that once you click your orders or your medications, once you select them, they will do exactly what the options at the top say. I can put a check in the box to the left of any of these items here to order them. So I want to go through some of my right-click options first. So you can see that there's some groups. These are the items here. The groups are above. So if I right-click on a group, I have some options there. I can add a new item to the group. I can delete the group. I can rename the group. I can save it as a personal template. So what this will do is if I made any changes to this care guide template, it would save the template as personal for Dr. Bones. So every time Dr. Bones logged in and went to this care guide, it would display any changes that he made specifically for him. As is the option of viewing the patient monograph. So I'll show you what this looks like. This is the set of question and answers that I had talked about before. So you can choose to view this at any point. Again, this is a handout that will be given to the patient. Another option is to include the monograph in the patient education handout, which would do a couple things. It would include the monograph in the printed out items that come with the prescriptions for this patient. It would also check the box on the encounter summary window to include the monograph in the patient education. And then the last option there is include patient instructions in the patient education printout. So this is specifically for your instruction orders. So if you had instruction orders selected, you would have that option to include them in your patient education handout. With the medication selected, I have some additional options. If I choose edit, I'm able, and I'll just show you what it looks like. So if we wanted to edit the prednisone, we didn't like the take three tablets daily, we could choose a different SIG, we could choose a different date, supply, and quantity as well, or change any of these options. I just want to get out of here for a second. Okay. So if I had made changes and I chose Save as Personal Template, those changes would save for every patient that Dr. Bones saw with Bell's palsy. If you went into the care guide for all those patients, that SIG would display differently. Administer is another option for medications. Obviously, this will only apply to administered medications. So if you do decide to administer a medication and you choose the Administer button, it will put the medication in a hold for administration status. Duplicate only applies if you already have the medication or order on the patient's chart and you decide to duplicate that order. This would normally be if it's a discontinued order or something that the patient has stopped taking and you wanted to reorder it again, you could choose duplicate. Save as personal we already reviewed, as well as the other three options, so I won't go over that again. And then for orders, orders has the same options for the most part, except they cannot use administer, and they are able to use reminders. So for the non-medication orders, you can set reminders for items, and these reminders will display on the Health Maintenance or HMP tab within the clinical desktop. Another option that we have is the guidelines. So I told you, I explained a little bit about what a guideline is. It's more for the person placing the orders. And the provider knows that there's a guideline attached because there's that red exclamation point to the left. And they can view the guideline by just going to guidelines and selecting item or template if it were a template guideline. All right. So Dr. Bones has decided to place an order for the Bell's palsy treatment. And also for the prednisone 20 milligram oral tablet, he wants a 30-day supply though. So I'm going to edit this and choose a 30-day supply. 90 is the quantity, and then I will do save and return to ACI. And again, this medication will be sent to retail and go to the patient's Walgreens pharmacy because that's what I had in context when I clicked the checkbox to the left. Also, another thing that I just want to point out is that this medication, as well as the order, is automatically linked to Bell's palsy because this is the Bell's palsy care guide. All right, so Dr. Bones has addressed the patient's Bell's palsy and now needs to assess the patient's back pain. So what I want to do here is just come back into my note. So So notice that back pain is not already on the patient's chart, or it would be listed here under unassessed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click New to add a new problem. All right, and I need to go to my History Builder tab, and I would go under Active Problems. And I know that back pain is ICD-9 code 724.5. And I'm going to check off backache. And notice that when I check off backache, I know that a Careguide is associated because Careguide here is populated. And I can see that there's actually multiple Careguides associated because there is a drop-down arrow right there. So if I click the drop-down arrow, I'm able to see all of the Careguides associated with this problem, this ICD-9 code. So you can, in fact, associate one problem with multiple Careguides. I'm going to click the lower back pain acute. So one sort of disadvantage, if you want to call it that, is you can't view all Careguides for backache at the same time. You can only view one at a time. All right, so for the patient's lower back pain, I'm going to prescribe the ibuprofen 600 milligram. It's still okay to send this to the patient's retail Walgreens pharmacy, and taking one tablet 3 times daily is okay. So I'm going to just check off that ibuprofen and continue my order. Okay. So now what I want to do is just commit my data. So I'm going to click the commit button. Now a couple things I want to point out. First of all, you can see that the Careguide patient instructions and Careguide patient monographs is checked off to be included in the patient education handout. So the reason these are checked, if you notice, I didn't actually select those right-click options from within the Careguide. These are actually checked because of a preference setting that I'll be talking about later on. But I wanted to let you know that if you didn't have that preference set to have these automatically checked, you could use those right-click options that we talked about earlier. So when I do save and continue, a couple things will happen. The 2 medications I prescribed will be sent to the patient's retail pharmacy. The requisition, if you had set up a requisition to print for your patient instructions, that requisition would print. And also your patient instructions and your patient monographs for your Careguides would print out of your designated printer. So I'm going to click Save and Continue. One other thing while this is going, the Print Monographs in Spanish button is right here to the left. And if I had checked that off, I would be able to print out the monographs in Spanish. I don't have any printers set up in this environment, so I'm just going to click Cancel, but normally you would have your printer listed there. All right, I'm going to save and close my note at this point and just return back to my PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. So now that we have reviewed Careguides from the perspective of a physician, you may be wondering who decides what information should display in the Careguide. You know, who displays which medication should be prescribed for which diagnosis and which orders are important to help monitor certain diagnoses. The answer is that there are several resources that contribute to the 963 Careguides. These include clinical practice guidelines, recommendations from panel of experts, standards of care, and expert opinion. Now that you know what a Careguide is and how a clinician may use it, you may wonder how you get Careguides installed onto your system. The answer is actually pretty simple. The client will need to purchase Careguides from Allscripts in order to have access to all 963. There's a set of 61 that come delivered with the version 11.2 and can be installed by the client's technician with the installation of version 11.2. However, if you do want access to all 963, you will have to purchase the care guides, and then the next step would be to enter a support force case requesting care guides be loaded into your system. The assigned technician would then perform the installation. All right, before we move on to that next slide, Kim, if you could just ask the next set of poll questions for me. Again, this is just another question. If you could answer it as quickly as possible, we can move on. This is just to give me an idea of where you are in your orders process, if you have it implemented or not in your system.
Okay, this is a pretty straightforward question. Are non-medication orders being utilized in your organization? And by that we mean, are you using your lab diagnostic order functionality, radiology, referrals, follow-ups, that type of functionality? Is that being utilized in your organization at this time? Give it just a couple more minutes, or another minute here. I also want to remind people, go ahead and post your question and answers as you come up with them, or questions in the Q&A section as you come up with them, and we will answer as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. What we do not get to, we will post on our wiki, where we post the webcast Q&A and the recordings. Okay, Katie, I'm going to close the poll. It looks like most of our listeners are using the orders functionality.
Great. Okay. That poll closed? There we go.
Poll is closed.
Okay. So the reason I asked that question is because setting up care guides can, depending how you decide to utilize care guides, can depend on if orders are implemented in your system. So the first step for setting up your care guides would be to complete the OID to OCD mapping. This would be specifically if you are going to use the orders within the care guides. So if your organization has not implemented orders yet or completed the OID to OCD mapping yet, don't worry. It is possible to narrow down the care guides you will be using by reviewing the care guides and then reviewing the orders within those care guides, and then only map those OCD items listed in the care guides to your OID items. So even if you haven't begun, or even if you have not mapped your OID to OCD items yet, you can, in fact, just map the ones that are in the care guide if you decide to utilize those orders. Based off of the poll question, I can see that most of you do have the orders module set up in your EMR, which is great. Those of you that do not currently use orders, you can still implement care guides. You will only be able to use them for medications, though, and will not be able to utilize them to their fullest. The orders and care guides will not work properly, though, until the OID to OCD mapping is complete. That's a very important part. Therefore, this process must be completed prior to implementing care guides if you are using the non-medication orders. OID to OCD mapping is sometimes completed during the order implementation process. So those of you that are currently using orders, you'll want to check and make sure that that mapping was complete. Again, if it was not, you don't have to do all of your OID to OCD mapping. You can specifically focus on those orders in the care guides you decide to use. After your OID to OCD mapping is complete, for those of you that will be using the orders and care guides, the next step would be setting up care guides. Setting up care guides would be to save the Allscripts delivered care guides as a draft enterprise template. Please make sure to note, draft enterprise template. And I'll go into more in just a minute as to why it's so important to save it as a draft enterprise and not an active enterprise. The Allscripts delivered templates are not editable, and they cannot be viewed by users on the front end. So once you get Careguides installed in your system by the technician, no one can really start using the Careguides until you save those Careguides as enterprise. All right, so the Careguides Allscripts delivers can be thought of as kind of a library that is updated by the Allscripts clinical content team periodically. These Careguides are not directly editable until they're copied and saved as an enterprise template, just like we talked about. Once the Careguides are set up as enterprise, an analyst or a provider can review them and make changes to them within Careguide admin. The options when editing a Careguide include changing the display name of a Careguide, changing the order of different orderable items, adding or deleting orderable items, adding or deleting group items, editing the monograph, creating a free text monograph, making the Careguide accessible to certain ages or genders, and linking problems to Careguides. Remember that at least one problem must be linked to a Careguide for it to be accessible to users. I'll demonstrate how to edit a Careguide in just a couple minutes. Careguides are edited by analysts from the TW Admin workspace within Careguide Admin on the Enterprise or Personal tab. So it's within TW Admin, and then there is a menu item for Careguide Admin. And then you have the tabs Enterprise or Personal. Those are the two tabs where Careguides can be edited. They can also be edited by providers from within the Phys Admin toolbar or the PAP by Module menu by selecting Base and then selecting Careguide Template. If an organization does decide to give providers access to the PAP by Module or Phys Admin toolbar, it's important to note that in 11.2 they will have access to all of the tabs. So they'll have access to all of the enterprise templates as well as every provider's personal template. Prior to editing a Careguide, the Allscripts template should be saved as an enterprise draft, and the display name should be changed to something that can distinguish the enterprise Careguide from the delivered Careguide. So for instance, if I were editing the anxiety disorder Careguide for the Galen EMR, I might rename the Careguide Galen Anxiety Disorder to distinguish it from the delivered Careguide. The reason we do this, which we'll get to in just a couple minutes, is because when you do receive content updates, it's important to be able to distinguish those Careguides that you have used in your organization from those that Allscripts delivers to be able to make the necessary updates or changes to your enterprise templates. Again, we'll go over that in just a couple minutes. So can providers edit or create their own Careguides? Everyone should be saying yes to this. From our demonstration with Dr. Bones, we did see that providers can indeed edit and create their own personal templates. There are different levels of editing that can be controlled through a preference we will discuss in a few minutes. But providers, no matter how this preference is set, providers are able to save Careguides as templates, as their own personal templates. Providers can save Careguides through the ACI using that right-click option of Save as Personal, or through the PAP by Module, or otherwise known as the Phys Admin toolbar workspace. Once a template is saved as a personal template, an analyst can also edit it in Careguide Admin from the Personal tab. Remember, any edits made to a personal template only affect the template for that provider. It does not affect the enterprise templates. Furthermore, it's important to note that if a medication that is on a Careguide is discontinued, the medication will not be auto-removed from the Careguide. Therefore, a process for notifying providers of discontinued medications or cleaning up personal Careguides is a good idea. So please do note that discontinued medications, even when you run your medicine updates, they do not automatically get removed from your Careguides. So that process of notifying providers of discontinued medications that could display on their Careguides is important. There are 3 preferences related to Careguides that I would like to discuss. The first one is the print patient education preference, which controls when the patient education materials checkbox is checked on the encounter summary window. Remember, this material will print upon saving the encounter summary depending on the preference. So this is the preference that I was talking about when we were reviewing those 2 checkboxes on the encounter summary window. So if you have this preference set to always, the patient education material will always print regardless of whether a Careguide template is associated during a patient encounter. The next option, only if Careguide associated, the patient education material only prints if a Careguide template is associated during the patient encounter. And the third option, never, patient education material will never print automatically, but it will still print if the user checks off those checkboxes listed in the encounter summary window. The second option, for the second option, I would actually like to go back into the application. And here we go. Okay. Just to kind of show you what this preference controls. So this preference, that was the Careguide default opening section preference. And the default, yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Kim. You're starting to cut out, so I don't know if something's changed, but I just wanted to let you know you're starting to cut out a little more than you were.
Thanks. Let me know if it continues.
Okay.
So this preference, the Careguide default opening section preference, decides which of these radio buttons is checked. So if you set this to all, then all of the sections, medication, order, instruction, precaution, etc., will display. If I choose RX, just my medications will display as soon as the Careguide opens. Orders, my non-medication orders will display, my labs, my radiology, etc. Instructions, your patient precaution and instruction orders will display. And then follow-up and referrals, obviously your follow-up and referral orders will display. So one thing that's important to note is if you are an organization that is going to utilize Careguides but only for medications, not for the non-medication orders, you may want to default this to RX so that only your medications display. Otherwise, if you default to all, you'll have all these other sections displaying with nothing underneath. Just something I wanted to point out. Let me go ahead back to my document here. Okay, so again, that was the Careguide default opening section preference. And the last preference we're going to talk about is called Allow Advanced Personal Editing of Careguide Templates. So this will specifically apply to your providers. It can be set at the user level, and it decides how much editing privileges the provider has. So you have 2 options, setting to N or do not allow advanced editing, or set to Y, allowing advanced editing. So no matter how this preference is set, the provider will always be able to save selections as default. For example, labs the provider prefers, edit the saves for the medications and variables, as we saw during our demonstration, add customized guidelines and save to a personal template, set a default opening section and save that to a personal template, or add ad hoc items for the current patient. However, if the provider decides to add the ad hoc items, those ad hoc items are not saved to the personal template. If this preference is set to Y, the provider is able to do all of the items listed above, as well as add new orderable items and save them to a template, delete items or headers, edit headers, and rearrange items or headers. So you want to decide what kind of editing privileges your organization wants to give providers using this preference. All right, so now that we have reviewed Careguide setup, the next step would be to review how you how you install the Careguide content updates. Careguide content updates can be installed by a client technician with access to the AHS FTP server. The directions for performing the install can be found in Support Force under the Product Documentation tab. And then when you're within that tab, you want to choose Enterprise EHR from the first drop-down, then Clinical Content from the second drop-down, and then Careguide Releases. The latest release version is the first quarter 2011. All right. So now that we have reviewed everything there is to know about Careguides, let's just check out how to edit those Careguides like we've been talking about. So I'm going to go back into the application, and I want to log in as, sorry, give me just a second. I want to log in here as an analyst. So I'm going to log into TW Admin. And then once you log into TW Admin, we said all editing by analysts would be done from the Careguide Admin menu item. So within Careguide Admin, I have 3 tabs: All Scripts, Enterprise, and Personal. All right. So let's start off with the All Scripts tab. From this tab, just reviewing some of the columns here, we have the Careguide template name. Then we have the physiological category attached to this Careguide. If there were any gender or age ranges set, we would see that here. Under release date, this is the date the template was released from All Scripts. The review date would be set by the analyst. It's a way of tracking what Careguide templates have been reviewed. And then the next column is the date the Careguide was activated as an enterprise template. So what's important here is we can see that all of these templates have in fact been activated. We're going to pretend like the acne neonatal was not activated yet, okay, just for review purposes. So if this were not activated yet and we had just gotten all of these Careguides installed onto our system, remember the first step would be to save this Careguide template as an enterprise draft. So we would right-click the item, right-click the Careguide, choose Save All Scripts as Enterprise, and then select Draft. Again, the reason that we select Draft is because if we had selected Active right away, that Careguide would be immediately available to users. And if we wanted to make any changes to that Careguide, we would probably want to put it as a draft first in order to review it, make those decisions, make any changes, and then save it as an active. So again, I'm going to choose draft here. Before we leave the All Scripts tab, I just want to review the right-click options here to make sure we're going over everything. The View All Scripts would allow you to view this Careguide in view-only mode. Remember, you cannot edit the delivered Careguides. You can only edit them from the Enterprise tab. You could mark this item as reviewed or unreviewed. If I mark it as reviewed, it will put a review in date. It will put today's date in the review date. If I mark as unreviewed, it will take away that date. And then I can also choose to print the All Scripts Careguide for review or distribution. All right, so now that I marked the Careguide as an enterprise draft, we'll need to navigate to the enterprise tab and then rename the template. So we can find there is the draft item. And I am going to right-click on that item and choose Edit, or I can choose the Edit button down here to the left. I'm going to right-click and do Edit Draft. And again, the reason that I am renaming this Careguide is to distinguish it from any All Scripts delivered Careguides. And it's also just best practice. So in my display name, I'm going to keep it named Acne Neonatal, but I'm going to rename it with the name of my organization just in front of it. I have 3 options. I can save and continue. which will save my changes and keep me in edit mode. I can save it as draft, which will do nothing but save in this case because the care guide is already a draft, and then it will close the detail window. If this care guide that I'm editing was not already a draft, this option would actually save an additional copy of the care guide in draft form. But again, that's only if this care guide I have in edit mode was an active care guide. And then the last option, Save as Enterprise, is only available for active care guides and would save the template and close the detail window. I'm just going to do Save as Draft. So there we go. Now that I have renamed my care guide, I want to make any necessary updates. So again, I can do this going back to that edit option. I can do this either by right-clicking and going to edit or clicking the edit button down here. So just kind of to review each of these sections. So the first section that I'm in is monograph. Here I am able to add to the answers to these monographs. So these up here are the delivered all scripts questions. And then the answers are the delivered all scripts answers, but you can certainly add, type, whatever you want to do to this monograph. Also, if you decide that you don't want to use the all scripts delivered questions and you want to create your own set of question and answers, you can choose the free text monograph option, and you can type your questions with your answers here. You can also use any of the formatting options at the top of the screen. Excuse me. So I'm going to close the monograph section. The next section that we have available to edit is our order sets. So from within our order sets, the first one we have is our prescription orders. The next one is our lab orders, the radiology orders that would display their orders.
Katie, are you still there? We can't hear you. Looks like we've lost Katie for just a second, so hold on and let's get her back online. We apologize for this difficulty. I'm sure it won't take but just a moment for her to get dialed back in. Katie, again, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. We've lost voice with you. Again, we are very sorry for this. Give us just a moment, and we'll get her back online. We have Carla Kortner here trying to help us out. We're going to try to send Katie a note to let her know that she's unable to be heard. Again, we apologize for this technical difficulty. The way she was breaking up, it sounded like she was having some phone issues in her area, so we'll get her reconnected here in just a moment. Go to an alternate phone. We'll be back on track in just a moment.
Can everyone hear me?
Yay, Katie's back.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I got back in right away, but I just could not, you couldn't hear me. I could hear you. All right. Sorry about that again. I apologize. Can you still see my Careguide template editor window?
No, it's a blank screen, so you need to pull your
Okay.
PowerPoint back up.
All right. Okay. Are we good? Can you see it
Yes.
now, Kim?
I
Okay.
can see it.
Okay, great. So sorry about that. Again, we're in our Careguide template editor, and we're editing the order set. So our right-click options here, I can add a new group. So if I wanted to add a group, I just choose that option, and I can edit this group to change the name. You obviously wouldn't call it medications. Now that I have a group added, again, some Careguides come with a list of medications, some don't. In this case it didn't, and I wanted to add a new medication. So I added a new item, and now I'm going to add an item, or I added a new group. Now I'm going to add an item to that group. So let's say, this isn't obviously realistic, but if I wanted to add Coumadin, I'm going to select the dosage that I would like there. And then it prompts me to select the SIG that I want and the day supply and quantity, because again, this is what will default in for the providers when they go to prescribe this medication from the Careguide. So now I have my item and my group. Some other options here, I can delete a group. I can add a template guideline as well. If I right-click on a medication, I can also delete that medication. I could edit the medication, which would bring back up that option to change the SIG, day supply quantity, or refills. I could add a guideline. It would have to be a template guideline. Or I could view the item details. So similar options display for your orders. So you have your group and then your items. So on my group I have the same options. And for my orders, if I go to use edit, my only option will be whether or not I want to make this order schedulable or not. So if you decide that you want an order to be schedulable for every 3 months, or let's say you have a colonoscopy listed here and you have it listed it's schedulable for every 1 year. So maybe that's something that's defaulted in for your orders. Another option would be to add an item guideline to any orders that meet the NQF measures for meaningful use. All right, so that's editing your medications and your orders. And then the last option here, the last section, is your template details. So we did go through changing your display name from the template details section. You could also set your age range for the template, so the template will only display for patients that fall into the age range that you select here. You can also set a gender for the template, so the template will only display for patients that fall into that gender category. Right from within here, you can change your status as well. And the last option is to change your associated problems. So you could choose to add or delete problems that are associated to this template. Excuse me. Remember that at least one problem must be associated for the template to display for users. I'm going to just cancel out of here because I don't actually want to make any changes. But if you did, you could choose the Save as Draft or Save and Continue options. All right, and then I just want to review some additional right-click options that you will have. So you can choose, you can view your draft and edit it, which is kind of what we looked at so far. You can save your draft as an enterprise active or enterprise inactive template. So it saves it right in the same tab as active or inactive. You do have the option of deleting draft care guides. Once a care guide is active, you only have the option of inactivating it, not deleting it. You can also export or import the templates. So exporting will save the template, or sorry, will export the template in an XML format, code format. And then importing template, you could import any templates that are in that same XML code format. Unfortunately, the export and import options are not really readable to the normal eye. It is the code, it is exported in code. And then the last options here, so mark draft as reviewed or unreviewed, does the same thing as it did on the All Scripts tab. It marks a reviewed date in this review column or will remove that reviewed date. So for active templates, we have just a couple additional options. So active templates can be saved as personal active or inactive options. If I choose this option, what I'm doing is I'm choosing to save this specific template as a personal template for a provider. And I will be prompted to search for a provider's name, select the name. Once I click OK, that template is saved under this provider specifically. The provider will still have access if it's an active template, but at that point, an analyst would be able to go to the Personal tab and edit the template further. You could save the enterprise as draft, which would create an additional care guide template in a draft format. You could, as we talked about, inactivate a care guide. You can always reactivate a care guide using the Activate button. It doesn't go away. You also have the option of replacing all personal versions. So this is an interesting option that you're going to kind of want to talk with your organization about how you want to use. Replacing all personal versions will take this template exactly in its form in the enterprise and replace all the personal versions on every provider within your EMR to match that enterprise template. So depending how your organization works, there may be instances where this is, logical. If you have a lot of discontinued medications on a care guide, or if a care guide was really changed during a content update, you may choose to replace all versions, all existing versions of that template for providers. And those are the only real differences for your active templates. And the last tab I want to go to is Personal. So if I pull up Dr. Bones here, you have the same right-click options for the most part. You can edit, you can activate or inactivate the template. And from here, any analyst can edit a provider's personal template. The only difference is that no care guides will display until you have a provider in context over here. All right, so now that we went through how an analyst can review and edit care guide templates, we want to go through as if we were a provider. So providers will normally not have access to Careguide admin here. So the option for providers to review this in depth and make those edits or changes would be from the PhysAdmin toolbar. So you could give providers access to the PAT by module, and then they would select base, and then select Careguide template management, and you can see that they do in fact have access to the enterprise, all scripts, and personal tabs, and are able to search for other providers. So that's just something important to note, that if you do give providers this access, they do still have access to all templates in the system. All right. So I know that was a ton of information, but I hope you have been writing down your questions and putting them into the Q&A section for Kim and I to review. I'd like to take a minute while we're reviewing your questions and present a poll with some questions for you that are about the presentation. It's not a test, but it's more like a way for me to kind of see what items really hit home and what we might need to review a little bit more before we end the presentation. So Kim, I'm going to hand this over to you to give out those 5 poll questions.
Okay. As she said, there are 5 questions here, so we'll allow a little more time for this. Come on, open poll for me. Can everybody see the poll? Katie, you see it?
I do not see it.
Let's just see if everybody's answering it. And it's not. There it goes.
There we go.
Okay. All right. We'll give a little bit longer time to have everybody answer these since there are 5 questions. I know you're trying to read and answer, but one of the things I want to mention, we have a ton of questions, and they are awesome questions. So that I want to tell you right now up front, there's no way we're going to be able to get through every single one of them. We will get them posted as quickly as possible. And it looks like some of the questions that have been asked that Katie's kind of touched on a little bit more as she's gone through her presentation. So maybe we've answered a few of those already. But when we post the Q&A, we'll try to go a little bit more in depth if we feel we need to, based on everything. We still have about 10 people waiting to finish. I hope everybody gets to enjoy their Friday after this and are somewhere in the United States where there's pretty weather and not rain and yuck. Okay, we got a couple more people that's still answering.
So Kim, are you showing all 5? Because I'm not seeing all 5 questions.
Yes, I see. Yeah, all 5 is there.
Okay. For some reason, I'm just seeing a combination of polls 1 and 2.
Nope, they're all 5
Maybe
there.
it's just how it's looking to me.
Yeah, someone just sent me a message, said they had all 5.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Looks like we've kind of came to a standstill. We'll give you a couple more seconds here to finish out.
Please make sure you do answer all the questions, because we're just looking for those people that are in an in-progress state to make sure that they have had time to finish. So even if you're not sure, just still answer the questions. Again, we can't see who's answering what.
I think they're taking this as a test, Katie. They're taking it pretty seriously.
Well, let's review them. I don't want to hold up too much time.
All right, guys. 1, 2, 3. We're going to close this poll. It's closing.
Okay, so So I'm just going to take a minute to kind of review those questions. The number one question where I thought there was a little bit of confusion, I guess, that seemed, was the question that said, it was the third question. It said, when content updates are installed, do enterprise and personal care guides get overwritten? I didn't address that directly, but I do just want to point this out. So the answer to that is no. When you receive content updates, your personal and care guide, your personal and enterprise care guides do not get overwritten automatically. You can choose to override them. So there are a couple options once you receive your care guide update. So the first thing that it does is when you receive your update, it updates all of the care guides in your All Scripts tab. So within Care Guide Admin, it would update all of those All Scripts care guides. So the reason, as I had stated before, that it was so important to rename your any care guides that your organization is using is because if you choose to bring over that care guide and make it an Enterprise Active template, it will override any care guides that are enterprise. So again, you would have to manually choose, select that care guide and choose Save as Enterprise for that template to override any enterprise templates that have the same name. So you can't have two templates that have the same name. So if you don't change the naming convention, then you could potentially accidentally override your care guides and change them. So there are two options. So if you want to update your enterprise care guides with the Allscript changes, you can do one of two things. The first option would be to compare the enterprise care guides with the Allscripts care guides and then manually make your changes to the enterprise care guides. So you'd actually have to go into edit mode of any care guide that you want to change and make those changes. The next option would be to save the care guide as enterprise. And again, this second option will override any enterprise care guides that have the same name. So if you did not change the display name of the Allscripts care guide when you originally made it enterprise, all changes made to this care guide will be overwritten. I hope that makes sense. Again, if you still have questions about this, just write it in the Q&A and we could chat further about it. Some of the other questions, so question number 1 said, do Allscripts care guides need to be made into enterprise care guides before they can be edited? Most of you got that right. That answer is yes. So remember, you have to right-click on the Allscripts care guide and choose Save as Enterprise. And again, we recommend choosing Save as Enterprise Draft. The next question was personal care guides cannot be created for providers. That answer is, of course, false. Everyone pretty much got that one right. We went through the third question. So the fourth question there, let me just see how everyone did on this one. Most people got this one right as well. Care guides are accessible via the note and the ACI. So we saw both those ways during our demonstration today. So the answer to that is true. And the last question, what is the best way to notify Allscripts that I want to purchase care guides? The best answer there would be to enter a support force case. So if you want to purchase care guides, please enter a support force case. All right, everyone did a good job on those, so give yourselves a pat on the back. I'm going to just close out this poll here, and we'll move on to our next slide. We're just about finished. This is a list of references. I'll leave it up for just a minute, but I will also list these references on our Galen Wiki for you. These references I found very helpful. The Care Guide User Guide and the Care Guide Administrator's Guide, these first two on the list, are extremely helpful. They can both be found under Product Documentation in the Enterprise EHR version 11.2 Product Documentation. So again, you'd pull up Enterprise EHR version 11.2, and then you would, I believe it's, if you just do all documentation, you'll see these two documents there. You can also find them under the clinical content category, and then under under Careguides. There's also some great articles that have been written on the Galen Wiki. So these are some direct articles. You could find them just by going to the wiki and searching Careguides as well. Again, our wiki is wiki.galenhealthcare.com. It's just a great resource, so I definitely recommend checking it out for any of those outstanding questions that we don't get to today. And lastly, we are to our question and answer. I just want to point out that at the bottom of this page is our address, our web address for our webcast. So it's wiki.galenhealthcare.com/webcast. That's where you can find all of the questions and answers that we don't get to today, as well as this recording. So you can find all of that information at this web address. At this point, Kim, I know there's a bunch of questions out there, so let's try to get to as many as we can. We do not have a lot of time, unfortunately. So let's try to answer at least a couple. Kim, you there?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. The first question that I have here is, how do we get notified of the clinical content or your care guide updates?
So if you're not currently getting those updates, you should be getting those updates. But if you're not currently getting those updates, those clinical content updates, you can contact your account manager, and they should be able to set you up to make sure that Allscripts notifies you when those updates come out.
Okay.
Do you want any other ones?
Yeah. Second question is, will Allscripts install the updates for us, or do we have to install them ourselves?
Great question. So the answer is no. Allscripts does not install the updates for you. The client is responsible for installing all Careguide content updates. The instructions for those updates can be found under Support for Documentation under that same clinical content category where the other Careguide information is stored. And again, the most recent release of Careguide content is the first quarter 2011. So if you think you might be due for a content update, the first place you can check to see which content update you're using would be in, and I'll show you real quick, would be in the application. You can actually see when your system was last updated. So if I look on the Allscripts tab, my release date, this indicates, so that's the date that this Careguide was released. So this would indicate that I did receive the first quarter 2011 content update. So if you're not sure, this is a great place to look. If you did receive it, it would say the 3/15/2011. All right.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Yes. Can the function, whoops, hold on. My screen flip-flopped on me, and now I can't see the question. There it goes. Can the functionality that allows providers to create personalized care guide templates be turned off?
So unfortunately, no. Fortunately and unfortunately, I guess, that option is not available. So providers can always create their own personal templates, which is why it's so important to make sure that you have a way of managing any discontinued medications or care guide changes and notifying your physician community. So again, that preference, though, that allow advanced personal editing of care guide templates, that preference we discussed, controls what level of editing providers can do, but it never turns off the ability for providers to save care guides as templates and personalize them.
Okay. This user looks, they are not on 11.2 yet. They're still on the version 11.1.7. They do not see the Care Guide admin under the TW admin workspace. Where do they find that menu so that they can make changes and activate their Care Guides?
Sure. So I think this user's probably, or this listener, I should say, is probably in the same boat as a lot of people on the call. I saw a lot of people are still on 1117. So you will have the PAP by module or PhysAdmin toolbar by module option in versions prior to 11.2. You'll use this base option and then the Careguide template management. Within here, you'll have these options in version 11.17. This is where you'll do all of your editing. If you have a version prior to 11.2, you would have to access the Careguides through the PAP by module and then base and then Careguide template management to review all of your all scripts delivered content as well as your enterprise and personal Careguides.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think it's about time for us. I don't know if we're going to be able to answer any more questions at this point, but we will definitely be getting back to you with answers to any questions that we couldn't answer today via our wiki. So please make sure you visit our wiki next week. I expect to have our video posted there as well as any questions we couldn't get to with our answers. So that concludes our presentation today. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and sorry again for our technical difficulties. Before you leave, I just want to get to our last slide. If you do have any additional questions about Galen services, or about the presentation that you saw today, please make sure to visit our website at galenhealthcare.com and then go to the Contact Us menu, and you'll have a pop-up where you can just fill out your information and send your questions, and someone will get back to you within a couple days. Please don't forget to answer the survey at the end of this presentation. I really appreciate everyone coming and joining us today. I hope you got a lot of informative information. Have a great day.
Thank you, Katie. Thank everybody for joining us. And don't forget the next webcast, which is the 29th on analytics.